sorry, that's for a Democrat show.
Let me know when you're ready.
Was an extremely great conservative commentator. We're tearing it up on Wednesday night. This is awesome. This
will allow me to retort.
Well, this is Jersey Joe for the Reaver of Common Sense show. I'm on shrmedia.com.
Actually, I just totally screwed up. This show contains language that some viewers may find offensive. Listener discretion is advised. And now on to the show.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Now, that is one of my big fuck-ups. I'm blaming the board. I've been messing with the board, and I fucking forgot to turn the mute off. Thank you, Sean, for letting me know there was no sound coming through. That was a total blonde movement on my part. See, Sean was messing with me earlier, had me thinking of other stuff, and, it just... He said he messed the show up. I'm blaming him. I know other people have done it. I had the mute on. I thought I turned it off. It didn't. And I'm so worried about this damn mixing board screwing up and all the issues I've been having. Well, you should have clicked on that little link and jumped on and told me. Haha. And it's not the first time I've done that. Oh, well. That's why I need a fucking producer. But back to what I was saying, since you didn't hear me. We're starting out with that Russia collusion shit. We're back to that crap again. DOJ's come out and what's funny is they didn't accuse the conservative commentators. They said they unwillingly were working for this company that was paid by Russia. But of course, these liberals, as simple fucking minded as they are anymore, oh, you're a conservative, you're a Russian agent. Here, let me show you. Let me just. But seriously, Sean, thank you very much. Thank you so much for that. Why I looked this up. I know you've been there. But this, I'm not going to go all the way back, but yesterday I got called Ivan. Here it is. All right, let me give you a little backspin on this. I posted a Bloomberg article, actually a screenshot of a Bloomberg article of Vladimir Putin endorsing Kamala Harris. Okay. I posted a Bloomberg. Bloomberg is so far left. And I couldn't make it up. So I got called a liar, which whatever. And then this woman posts this because I posted a Bloomberg article and I also posted links to the article and links to an Axio. Anybody that knows,
Joe, just so you're not being rough on you, I'm getting only static on your end. Can't hear you. I wish I could. I'm trying.
this is really. All right. Whoa. I get pissed here. This
Now I'm
board,
getting you.
you can hear me?
It's just real staticky. Yeah, it sounds like there's
All right. The
there's a
gain,
line or a chord
control,
that's
that little knob. I don't
yeah.
even have to touch it, and all of a sudden it'll go wacky, and I'll tap it, and it'll come back. Like right now.
Right where you are is fine.
Okay, I'll leave it there.
I figured I had to fly in and save the day. Somebody had to do it.
Yeah. Well, you're the one that distracted me and got the board all messed up.
It's always my fault. Always my fault.
Well, that's because you're Russian.
Yeah.
You're Russian bot. That's just driving me up a wall. I'm not driving me up a wall, but almost beyond comical. Almost beyond comical. Because everybody now is a Russian bot that disagrees with the DNC.
Yeah, and one of the things that came out too, and people are forgetting that there was some inclination made or some suggestion made that Putin just came out and endorsed Kamala. Like, I don't know how they square that circle, or I just don't get it. Um, was there maybe Russian money oligarchs? And that's the other thing too. They left out is it money from the nation of Russia or their oligarchs? Because I'll tell you right now, there are definitely some rich Russians who do not like Putin. You know what I mean? So it's hard to say, like, they haven't specified where that money is. They haven't specified anything. And this is the problem that I have, and a lot of people have with the DOJ is and the FBI is they come out, they say things like this, they throw out this kind of real vast net, this wide net about like, hey, this is what they're doing and this is why it's wrong, blah 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 blah. But they don't give you enough details and specifics to actually let you form an intelligent opinion. They say, hey, there's money going into conservatives coming from Russia. Oh, and also you gotta watch out for Russian disinformation because I really wish I kept a copy of it. I can't find it right now. The NSA just came out and said that somebody posted article from the NSA, and I don't know if you have it ready to go.
Nah.
Essentially saying, "Hey, we don't have any specific incredible information about this." And it was out in the last half hour, 45 minutes. I thought I retweeted it, but I could be wrong.
Well, one of the things I noticed when they put that out is they even stated, and I've seen some of the documents, and I should have clicked on them, where it states that the conservative commentators didn't know this was going on behind their back.
Yes.
It's not that they're guilty of this. It's just they happen to work for a company that possibly had ties to Russia, but these people were talking what they want. And the guys that they're pointing out were not even Trump supporters. Major Trump supporters. They came on recently, but most of them were DeSantis and Nikki Haley supporters.
Right. And I mean, look, I don't necessarily. I have a hard time with. I look at those people, if you will, the Nikki Haley group and all that. I kind of look at them like Cheney and like the two Cheneys, where it's like you're not really a conservative, you're a neocon, you're a rhino, you're a Democrat who was liked Republicans when you were making money and we were blowing shit up.
Yep. I think this whole releasing of that indictment, this was supposed to be the October surprise. She's so far behind on the polls that they had to try to do something to give a bump to her campaign. Hey, BZ, yeah, I know. Guess who's here? Came in for a couple minutes.
I don't know what the setting is that I have to change, but I can't respond to the restream chat, or I would have. Because
if you click bottom left, you have to pick out who you want to talk, which channel. Is there a little selector?
Nope, I only get private chat. I know.
Right. Go ahead and talk about the indictment a little bit more, the best you can. And let me see something.
Which indictment do you want me to talk about? You have to get me to narrow that down a little bit. Look, I was just I had nothing planned. I thought you're having mic issues, and I jumped in to save the day like the hero that I am.
I don't know. There's a lot going on. The Russia indictment we had come out. We got now Trump's sentencing is pushed back to the 25th. We all know what that's about because they knew if they sentence him now. Damn, I'm having brain. I'm trying to think of so many different things at the same time. If they tried to sentence him now, it would.
I am adorable, BZ, for the record. Yes. Sorry. Go ahead.
No problem. It would martyr Trump even more.
Yeah. Yeah, so they knew that. Jonathan Turley on Fox News wrote about that today, and I agree wholeheartedly. The other thing, too, is if they went through to the sentence, as soon as the sentence drops, that's when the appeal starts. So as soon as that appeal starts, it'll start exposing the reality of the lack of case, as much as they want to say it's a case. Because you remember, he's not convicted of anything until he's sentenced. That's something that a lot of people are like, oh, he's convicted of this. No. He hasn't been sentenced yet. The conviction isn't complete until he is sentenced legally. So, reality of the situation is he's not convicted yet. And like I said, once they convict him officially, the appeal starts, and now the case can be opened up wide and show everybody exactly what's going on. And a high profile case like that would be appealed fast as hell.
Oh yeah.
There's just no doubt about it. The appellate court will take it up right away. They can put extenuating circumstances on. There's a couple legal things they can do, but they can also push it. So if the New York Supreme Court says, "Hey, we're not going to hear this," they can actually petition the U.S. Supreme Court to hear it or work their way up, and that could be heard prior to the election. Actually, if they really force the issue, they may get it just before the election.
Yep.
And it'll show that New York will have the Alvin Bragg's DA's office will be showing his ass to the entire world and what a bullshit set of circumstances that case was. And let's remember that case is the same paperwork error or whatever you want to put it that Hillary Clinton had. And she got hit with an FEC fine and got kicked out the door.
Yep.
That was it. And it wasn't her directly that got hit. It's the campaign.
Yeah.
The campaign pays for all of this. This is why the FEC, everyone brought it up, and it hasn't been brought up since. Speaking of like how campaigns are responsible, when Kamala Harris became the presumptive nominee before she was officially the nominee, and they dropped Biden off the FEC registration, added Waltz, everyone said, wait a minute, how are they able to keep all of that money? Because it was donated to the Biden-Harris campaign, not the Harris-Walz campaign. And even somebody from the FEC gave an interview saying, yes, we have to look into that because there are stipulations saying X, Y, and Z, that it can't just be handed over like that. Because what point does it end? Kamala Harris was not the primary on that registration with the FEC. Joe Biden was. So it begins the question of, well, if Kamala Harris dropped out, could Waltz take it and then pick somebody else? Like, how far down that line can you go where you can just start handing money off? And if that's the case, then why doesn't the DNC just run all of these people, Oprah, all that, run 15 of them? They all raise money. And then when they decide to pick one, like they did with Kamala, they can just walk around and say, oh, I'm taking this and I'm taking this and I'm taking that. So there are laws in place. I'm not an FEC expert. I'm not claiming to be.
But you stayed at a Holiday Inn, right?
But I did stay at a Holiday Inn a couple nights ago. So that's what Trump, going back to my original point, that's the whole case against Trump. And people forget the federal government had that case prior to Alvin Bragg and then said, nope, we're not touching this shit. We don't want to touch it. Yeah, there was no prosecutorial ability for them, is what they said. They had no path to prosecution. So they chose properly to not do anything at all. And then Alvin Bragg, who I know everyone said this before, I'm not saying anything new. Alvin Bragg, who ran on, I'm going to get Trump. Letitia James in New York, who ran on, I'm going to get Trump, which, by the way, there's an old communist saying that says, you show me the man and I'll show you the crime, that gets applied, which essentially says you can convict anybody as long as you make up enough shit. And that's what they did with this. And I don't feel bad.
What's the one out of Georgia?
Oh God, Fannie Willis. Yeah, that's a whole other.
She was another one though that ran on. I'm going to get Trump.
They pushed that case down the line as well. And all of this comes back to they don't want the appeal before the election. Now, here's what's going to happen in both those cases, just on a whim. Once he gets elected, they're going to drop the cases. And the reason they're going to drop the cases is because they're going to say it's the interest of justice. We don't want to put the country through the president, blah, 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 blah. But the simple fact of the matter is then they can't appeal. And as soon as they drop that case, they're going to petition. They're going to petition the court to seal all the documents. It's all garbage. I mean, everyone, and like I said, I don't feel bad for Democrats, but they are the biggest victim of a bait and switch right now because they're jumping on board. Oh, we got him. We got him. It's like the
Oh.
E.G. Carroll case. He's a convicted rapist. No, he's not.
And that
He
appeal
lost
started today.
He lost a civil case for something that happened 30 years ago with minimal evidence that was entered in because you do not need beyond a reasonable doubt. When it comes to, it's not the same standard as a criminal case. So he's not a convicted sex offender. Like that's what another thing they
Yeah.
try to throw out. Oh, he's a rapist or whatever.
Yeah.
He's not a convicted sex offender. A civil case is dramatically different. And I know CNN, MSLSD, and all those folks, they won't say this, but a civil case, I will tell you right now, the amount of civil cases that get settled or that people get held responsible for where there's no way those cases would get brought criminally for a reason. This is a huge difference with E. Jean Carroll, is they would never brought that case criminally because they could never prosecute it. So they bring it civilly because the threshold of evidence is much less.
I know this is going to be a
it's
little bit on
single
the
judge.
outfield. O.J. Simpson trial. Technically,
Yeah.
he was found innocent criminally, but he was found responsible civilly.
And there was way more evidence in the O.J. Simpson trial
Yes,
that
exactly.
he should have been found guilty. There's no doubt in anybody's mind. You go back and you look at the case, and I know BZ's probably like just snapping right now that we're talking about this. But you go back to the O.J. trial, there was the thing that went wrong with the O.J. trial, and kind of what happened with Alec Baldwin too, is there was a lot of procedural things that were not done at the time properly by the LAPD that kind of sank them, that gave the defense a place to really latch into and beat up and stuff that, the CSI stuff. There was they were just dirty, like not dirty like they were on the take. They were just sloppy in their work. And the same thing happened with the Alec Baldwin case. The whole reason the Alec Baldwin case got thrown out is because the CSI that responded to that scene and that processed everything, processed it in a way that said to me, through my years of experience working in and around law enforcement, is they did not ever think that this case was going to go somewhere. So they just kind of processed it half-assed, kind of just like, yep, we scoop, we bag, we take pictures, chain of evidence. Nobody's ever going to look at this again. Who cares? Who gives a damn?
It's going to go down as an accident, most
right.
likely.
And then when it came out, it's the same thing. Everyone's like, how is this guy not convicted? OJ, how is this guy not convicted? But those are incredibly different than the Trump case.
Well, yeah. I was talking between the criminal compared to the civil, how two different cases or the same case can go two different ways in two different courts. I do want to also add in one other case while we're all because it's kind of all connected.
It's 100% all connected because it's lawfare.
Hunter Biden's case out in California for the tax evasion. He pled guilty to all 9 charges. No deal, no nothing. Everybody's like, he did it for his family. No, he didn't. Well, he did it for his family, but he did it because the evidence could have linked Joe Biden to a bunch of shenanigans.
Well, let's legally look at this, what this prevented and what this does for Hunter. It prevents, like you just brought up, them diving into the finances of the Biden family and that being exposed, right? Because once you plead guilty, and now the judge doesn't have to accept that. We've seen that with the Hunter guilty plea before. I think the judge in this case will accept it, but they don't have to.
I thought he did. They didn't accept
finally accept it?
The Alfred.
Okay.
Or however you say it. The prosecutor wouldn't go that. Hunter just all 9 charges said, I'm guilty.
Right. And that is to protect, like I said, that is to protect because now you don't have discovery. You don't have all that stuff. It just pushes them by it. But the other reason, and this works to Hunter's benefit as well, is they want this case done before November so Joe can sign off on his pardon. That's what it comes down to. However, I do not think the buck stops there per se, because the amount of evidence that they've obtained in that case against Hunter, the gun case as well, is going to open up the Biden family if you have people who are should be investigating this properly as to the finances in general, the donations, where Hunter got his money, the ability to have access to the president, blah 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 blah, or then vice president. So I think it's over for now. I don't think. I don't know. I'm sure the Republicans will do one of these bullshit. We're going to do an investigation thing, and once they get all the evidence, yeah, and we're all sick of that too.
Yeah.
Um,
No,
you
that's
know,
what they keep. Oh, we're going to investigate. Great, investigate. Do something about it, because they investigate and go, here's what we found.
Yep. And actually, PZ just summed this up better than I can. The burden of proof is lighter in a civil case. In civil matters, the preponderance of evidence showing a more than 50% chance that one of the parties is at fault, and that's all that's necessary. So 50% chance. In other words, you know, beyond a reasonable doubt to 12 people is an immense burden that's put on the state to prove their case against somebody. When you have a single judge, and even if it's not this idiot judge that he had in the civil case, who was batshit crazy and everybody knows it, who was an anti-Trumper and blah 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 blah. The other thing that if it was, even if it was just a normal judge, the judge can say, "Hey, can you prove that he was there?" That's probably a 40% chance. Can you prove that they had a conversation? It's a 56% chance. Blah 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 blah. Right, and if it's 50 and a half, they're going to side with the plaintiff. You know what I mean? And that just means, is it possible Trump could have met that woman in a lingerie department at a department store in the 90s? It's possible.
Yeah.
It's 100% possible. I don't know. I don't know if
I do
Trump's out
find it
shopping,
funny that
that Trump's out shopping by himself in the 90s when he's married and like has all the. He was a millionaire in the 90s.
Huh?
The fact that he's just out strolling around when he was riding around in limousines back then and had protection and stuff that was private, I question that whole case. I really do. I am not a big believer in believe every single woman, because we've seen way too many cases
I hate
lately.
these cases of 30 years old where it's almost
Yes.
hard to defend yourself. But when the woman's case is not basically, it was an episode of Law and Order. It was taken
Yes.
directly from law. And the judge allows this. How?
Yep. Well, and you know what killed it for me too, because obviously, and I want to articulate, actual victims of crime deserve justice.
Yes.
And they deserve to be treated fairly. I will say that, obviously, I worked in the system. I believe that. I'm a wholehearted. But when the Believe All Women movement started, 4 or 5 years ago, and it was, and you saw how many false claims were made. But I specifically go back to the UNC, University of North Carolina. I believe it was a lacrosse team.
Yep.
Where there was a female who made allegations against like 8 members of the team. They were thrown out of school. They lost all of their scholarships and funding. Their lives were essentially ruined. And then the investigation turned out and proved it to be entirely wrong. And she actually got prosecuted, which was great to see that they actually did the right thing there. But the reality of the situation is that happened a lot. And you had a lot of people who are all of a sudden they were using the criminal justice system to get even with people that they didn't like, despite not having committed a crime. And that was what really was. That's the problem when you have cases like this. And there's a reason why with criminal cases you do have the statutes of limitations. Do I think at the end of the day with the E.G. Carroll case that he's going to probably get it overturned? Probably not. I doubt it'll get overturned.
I think it will.
But we'll see. I don't think it will in New York. I don't feel very good about New York overturning that one. The criminal case, yes, because the threshold is much different, right, as we discussed. So
yeah, but there's so many irregularities that was done even in that case that no. And if any judge that allows that to stick, we just know the system's fucked.
But, well, the system civilly is fucked anyhow. Tort reform is one of the biggest issues that I've had in this country for years, the lack thereof. Tort cases is out of control. It's why so many things are expensive. It's why your insurance is expensive. It's why your hospitals gouge. But It's why healthcare is so expensive. Is so much of that is to either recoup or build a fund for tort cases, civil cases, that it costs a tort. If you break down the amount of money that is spent fighting tort cases, paying off tort cases that are ridiculous cases, it'll boggle your mind. Literally trillions of dollars are spent in I think it's in the last 15 years or some study that I saw. Trillions. You look at our national debt, and this is where we're at with tort cases. You can sue anybody in just about any state because they looked at you the wrong way.
I don't like what you just said. I'm going to sue you.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And that's the problem we have, but it's also another tool in the Democrats' toolbox that they absolutely use when they need to make somebody look bad. And they're going to, you watch Benny Johnson, Tim Pool, all those guys. Somebody's going to file a civil case against, I forget the name of their network that they have.
Tenet.
Tenet, yeah.
Yeah, Tenet.
Someone's going to file a civil case against them as a result of this. You watch.
Yeah. Well, it's also funny that Tim Pool just announced that he had retained legal counsel to sue Kamala Harris for some of the videos that she put out that endangered his life. And all of a sudden now he's a Russian agent.
Yep, 100%. 100%. And it's funny because this goes back to they couldn't really get Trump. They tried like hell. They couldn't get him. And they found out the more they prosecuted him, that the more it just made him popular, right?
What's the other case that just got delayed even further? The January 6th case from Jack Smith.
Yeah.
That's been delayed.
Yeah.
They're pissed off about that. I mean, they've had a bad court week.
Well, and the Jack Smith case, all he did was repackage the same indictments and throw it back out, and it's going to get the same treatment.
Yep.
That is a political move, and everyone forgets Jack Smith was a friggin' nobody. He has a history of bungling easy cases, but he was a political hack. He was over at The Hague. Which is not a real court. It's so funny when you talk to people about The Hague and they're like, oh, it's the International Court of Justice. It's The Hague, blah, 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 blah. The Hague is imaginary at worst, or at best. The only reason The Hague has any teeth is because the countries involved in it allow them to. But The Hague can't, I'll tell you right now, we joke all the time, like, oh, if we ever, we're going to get prosecuted at The Hague for this. And, I think we've said that on SHR a billion times through the years. The Hague is like the UN. They have no teeth unless the country that they're prosecuting or, it's like what they did with Bibi Netanyahu. Oh, they're filing charges in The Hague for, war crimes, blah, blah. It doesn't mean nothing. Yeah. Because if The Hague mattered, Putin would have been gone years ago. Yep. The Hague doesn't matter. It is a kabuki theater at worst or at best, depending on how you want to look at it.
I just saw a BZ comment about changing the tort law. You want to change it? Make the loser pay all the cost.
Oh, no, I think that, and I think I've also said the same in criminal cases, that not a conviction that fell short, but when somebody files criminal charges against somebody else and it is found to be completely erroneous without any merit, zero evidence whatsoever, that they should be charged for filing a false police report every single time.
Well, even we're talking the lawsuits. You want to change it, change it. So right now, there's actually a case, and I'm not trying to change subject, but there's a case going on here in Florida and a couple other places it's reached out to. There's a YouTuber out in Ohio and Florida. He's gotten in a big tiff with his neighbor, and he's been filming everything that happens in public. Everything's been in public, and he's used it. The court case where she tried getting a restraining order against him, he's played the court case on his show. Yes, he's used the thumbnail picture of her face from these publicly accessed pictures.
Right. You have no right to privacy in public.
There's a couple of law tubers, they're called, lawyers that do, well, they jumped on it and talked about it and have used, well, she's now suing them, which the case that they're using doesn't apply to this. And they've turned around and said, number one, you file this case and you go forward. We're not only going after the lady that filed it, they're going after the lawyer. Florida allows you to go after 50% recovery from the lawyers.
Right.
We need that more.
And you have to realize, people forget you have no expectation of privacy in public. Right, wrong, or indifferent. And the only reason why it was never really an issue up until recently is because you didn't have the internet, right? People had pictures taken all the time in public. What's funny is back in the day when you used to appear in the newspaper, it was like a cool thing unless you were, an arrestee. Yeah. But it used to be a cool thing, like, hey, look, I was in the newspaper. That's me in the background. Or if you walked by a news camera doing a live report, you're like, hey, look, I saw so and so on TV. Now people are like, whoa, I don't want to be on it. Well, okay. But you have the it's the First Amendment. People have the right to film in public places.
Well,
now,
if that was the case, that there was an issue, how many people would get in trouble that go to Disney World, Disneyland, and they're snapping pictures and all those people in the background?
And I'll be the first to admit it does border, and I say this a lot of times with these, First Amendment, what do they call themselves? The people that always walk around with cameras like, I can be here, I could be here, I could be here. Auditors, that's what they call themselves, First Amendment auditors. All right. So there is a line, in my opinion, between your First Amendment right and harassing somebody specifically. And you see this a lot with the auditors, where they'll show up to the same business 10 days in a row. Well, I could be here, I could be here, and they're interviewing or whatever. And it's like, no. That's harassment. There's a difference. You're trying to create a problem. You're disturbing the peace. You're disturbing the peace of the people in there, or you're disturbing the people on that property. And that's different because you do not have the right to disturb somebody else's peace.
But I've also seen where the security causes the issue.
Oh yeah, no, but that's a different story.
But then they try to turn around. Well, you're disturbing the peace.
Right.
No, you're the one that's done all this. It's a fine line. And yeah, some of them go into it because they just want to sue. Some go into it to make sure that there is transparency.
I see very few of those people for real. That are doing it for the actual reasons. You do see them occasionally. Usually they're the ones who, when law enforcement show up, the cops like, look, I know you can do this. I know you can be here. Just work with me on this. And they're like, yep, cool, totally fine. But you have there's definitely, that's a 90-10 flop, man. I think there's 90% of them are just assholes looking for a paycheck.
I'm not going to argue that point. That's,
and the other 10%.
BZ sent an article from the AP I want to bring up. Let me pop this around. Boom. I need to share this. No. It's supposed to go to this window. There we go. Right-wing influencers were duped to work for covert Russian operation, U.S. says. They have millions of followers online. They have been major players in right-wing political discord since Donald Trump was president. It's right-wing political discord, so disagreeing with liberals. And they work unknowingly. For a company. And an indictment was filed Wednesday, alleges a media company linked to 6 conservative influencers, including well-known personalities, was secretly funded by Russian state media employees. Again, secretly.
Right. So, and this brings up a weird thing. So, you go back to what's the biggest Russia we know is, right? The Steele dossier.
Yes.
The Steele dossier was created by Democrats to implement Russia as an involvement with Donald Trump. We have seen China do legitimate actions in this country as of late, right? Trying to undercut our government and our government officials and a lot of other things. I mean, it's just
working for Democrat politicians.
Yeah, like
sleeping with them.
Right. So, but when it comes to Russia, and look, I'm the first one to admit, anytime I see, God, I hate Vladimir Putin. I hate most of the Russian government. I think they're abhorrent, atrocious, horrible people. This was before the Ukraine. This has nothing to do with Ukraine per se. Ukraine's just an extension as to why they're assholes. Vladimir Putin's a dickhead. And every time he like posts something with that, even conservatives are like, "Oh no, he's making a lot of sense." And I'm like, that guy is responsible for millions of deaths from his time in the KGB to his time since he's been in office. He has invaded other countries ad nauseum. It's not just Ukraine, it was also Georgia. We have to remember that under Bush. We have Vladimir Putin's a dickhead.
Yeah.
So I'm not defending Vladimir Putin ever. As a matter of fact, I am a huge wisher that somebody in his government will wise up, walk in, and put one in his head. I'll be the first to admit it. I know that's probably going to get us in trouble or whatever, but
Won't
I
be the
think
first time I got in trouble.
I think he is that much of a scumbag. I don't think we should do it. I don't want to be involved in it. But I wish that would happen. I really do.
Do you know
And
what
I
would be
wish
funny?
that-
Do you know what would be funny? If that does get turned in, someone does turn it in, it will be a Democrat turning me in or turning us in
Yeah.
at this point for
I
the
know.
show for
I
you
know.
doing that. Oh my God, look what he did. He wished someone dead.
I know.
He said
But
Putin.
like I said, I don't condone it. That
But I
doesn't mean
wouldn't
that
cry
don't
over it.
Exactly. That's exactly how I feel.
We
He
don't
is that
condone
much,
it, just wouldn't cry over it.
and because he is a puppet of China, and a lot of people, no, Putin's a Chinese puppet. He has become a Chinese puppet. He is
Russia has no money.
right. He has become what all of the satellite states were under the Soviet Union for Russia. He is now that for China.
Oh shit! Look who just got in the
100%.
chat.
Melanie Collette.
Holy shit!
It's so weird. It's almost like I was just talking to her earlier.
It's like a reunion.
It is a reunion show. So yeah, he's become a puppet state. Now, RT, are they funded by the Russian government? Yes. Are they but you have to show me before everyone gets all up in arms. And yeah. I mean, it's something that should be looked into as to why. What was their end game? But are any of these commentators doing anything that was pro-Russia, anti-American, and or anti-Trump? And you can't say that they were, if anything, you would have a better chance of saying that they were trying to get them to say stories that made Trump look worse based on the fact that Putin just came out and endorsed Kamala Harris.
No, that didn't happen. That's a lie.
Easy, comrade.
But it just lasts. All I did was posted a Bloomberg article, a left-leaning article, and I'm lying.
Yeah. Oh, no. That's the part that kills me is, so I don't understand what the end game was of RT funneling money into these businesses and not asking, and give me some sort of specific return. Did they have to, was it just advertisement? Was it just, were they pushing a certain script? But you also have to remember RT, even though it's government owned, isn't government owned. And that doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't people at RT who are fans of Putin or don't want to see him gone, or at least want to see him checked. And people forget, a lot of Russians do not like the Ukrainian war. Their kids are being conscripted and murdered and killed. And murdered's not really the word because it's a war, but killed over there. And the Russian people, a lot of them, and I look, I shit all over the Russian government. I feel the same way about the Russian people I feel about the Chinese people, that I don't harm, I don't wish any ill upon the people that live there.
Yeah.
So this is what they're alleging is being said.
That's what I've seen.
Okay, so record inflation. Well, that I don't understand that we had record inflation. So what's false about that? So if you're paying me to already look, I'll tell you right now, if somebody showed up, with the exception of a few countries, most countries, if they show up and go, hey, I'm going to give you $1 million to keep doing what you're already doing. Okay.
Democrats are going to jump all over it.
Right. They do the same thing. And we know that. But the simple fact of the matter is, all China.
And getting maybe the Chinese flu.
But job loss, all that stuff is what actually happened.
Yeah,
that's not Russian disinformation. That is facts, right? And Why would he come out? And I know everybody, I've already seen it. When Putin came out and endorsed Kamala Harris, they're like, oh, it's 4D chess. He wants to say that because he knows a lot of Americans don't like him, so they're going to do the opposite of what he said, blah, 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 blah,
It's
blah,
going to
blah, blah.
cause discord in America. That's
Right.
all it's about.
Bullshit. He actually wants Kamala Harris because she is easier on him.
He
She
backed
will not hold him
Hillary.
accountable. Yes. Right? The reset
Biden.
button. And that was after Hillary said all this awful shit about him, and he still backed it. Why? Because why would you not want somebody that you can walk all over if you're the Russian president?
Also, she gave him uranium.
Yeah, oh, uranium run one, the most underreported story and activities ever.
Yep.
The only thing that is less reported than it should have been is Benghazi, with Hillary. Uranium one. If people knew the amount of uranium that we shipped to Russia because Hillary made out like a bandit on it, literally, you'd be blown the fuck away. Uranium one was one of the biggest national security issues that this country's ever had, and nothing was ever done about it. If you're listening and you don't know what uranium one is, go check it out.
Yep. She had dinner at Putin's residence and bragged about it.
Oh yeah.
You brought up. Let me cut you off. Now, I'm sorry for cutting you off, bro.
No, of course you're going to cut me off. Jeez. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, no. Chris Brano put out a tweet today, and I think it's actually pretty relevant to what's coming up. He's asking for people to do one thing.
Yeah.
It's coming up on 9/11 for which is anniversary of Benghazi. Take a few hours either to read the book or watch the movie and see what really happened and what the Obama's administration with Hillary Clinton in charge of Secretary of State, how they handled that and left our guys to die.
Well, and it's really sad. You know, we know Tonto.
Yes.
We've both been fortunate enough to spend time with him.
And I got news for you after the show about that.
Okay. One of the unfortunate parts about the Benghazi failure by the Obama administration is because of the 9/11 terrorist attacks being so difficult for this country that gets so much more attention on that day. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's right. It's really hard to like balance it. But you know, that's something that you just can't forget what those folks went through and what they had to suffer and why they had to suffer it. That's the other thing. It's not just what they went through. I mean, you go through I just read the book, reread actually a signed copy of the book that Chris gave me. Not last week, just because it's a great book, and I watch the movie every time it's on. But it's not just that story as to their fight that day. It's what led up to it. It was the fact that we murdered Gaddafi and left that country fall into utter disarray. That was a Hillary Clinton thing. So, you know, it's you got to remember everything that led to it and how, and I know he brought up Ronan Bubb and how, you know, the Obama administration, and that's the other thing, as much as Hillary is responsible, it was the Obama administration. Yep. They ignored threats that day. They downplayed threats that day. And, you know,
I'm breaking in it because you brought up something earlier.
Okay.
He just gave it to me. Give me 1 second.
I didn't mention syphilis once. Oh, there it is. There it is. I knew it was out there. I knew I saw it. Yep. And that's DNI, National Intelligence, essentially saying, hey, we don't have anything to suggest that the Russians are trying to interfere. Now, if you want to talk, and this goes back to the whole tenant, and you know, the money being paid to tenant from RT. We have a ton of money into every national media, including Fox, CNN, MS, that comes from overseas, that people pay or advertise or whatever. It is not uncommon. I mean, look at how much money came from Saudi Arabia into our news agencies. It is not uncommon for money to come from overseas. Now, if the money's coming from Russia, and again, we all know how I feel about the Russian government. I'm not making excuses, but it is business as usual money, then what's the problem with that? What's the difference between them and money coming from Saudi Arabia? Look,
I could top it.
We have evidence, and I'll let you get to that. It's my show, Jesus. we we have evidence that the Saudi government was involved in the 9/11 attacks.
Yep.
A lot of evidence, and more has come out just 2-3 months ago when they released the video of that Saudi representative walking around the U.S. Capitol building and gaining video surveillance with a camcorder. So, where does it end is my point. Is like, do we say no outside money in media or business whatsoever? But you have to prove something more than just, hey, the money came from overseas. And it's amazing how they have zero threshold of evidence when it comes to attacking conservatives. But when you bring up, I don't know, quid pro quo with Ukraine, and the evidence is in your face that this was while Joe Biden was vice president, there was a quid pro quo and nothing. Yeah. No, well, that's not really, that's nothing. That's nothing. Why are you even talking about that? He can do that. He's vice president, blah, 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 blah. That's where, like, I just tell Democrats, I'm just like, go fuck yourself.
I have been trying to be so nice, but so many times I just want to do that anymore. But also, one of the guys that's been accused and unknowingly was a part of it, YouTube just permanently banned his account.
Who?
Tyler Hansen.
Oh, no kidding.
They permanently banned him, even though that it's been said by our DOJ that they were innocent bystanders in this. But I have a question for you.
Yes.
We're talking about election interference. I could show you the world's biggest election interference, and the Democrat Party is promoting it.
Send it.
Open border.
Oh, yeah.
Biggest election interference that I've ever seen, and they're trying, and they've said they want to give them amnesty.
Oh, yeah, no, they're trying. They're trying, and it kills me because when you bring up the amount of illegal immigrants that have come into this country and you say, hey, we're worried about them voting. Well, we have no proof that illegal immigrants voted. I've heard that a billion times. It's like, yeah, you know what? Maybe that specific person in their name hasn't been able to, but that doesn't mean a lot of people don't realize that illegal immigrants, when they come to this country, one of the things that they do is they steal other people's identities of the dead, the elderly, people, relatives of their own. And Melanie Clout brought up, it changes congressional districts, and I'll actually talk about that because it comes down when we do the whatchamacallit there, where we count how many people are in the country. I can't think of the word right now.
Consensus.
No, the census. Not consensus. The census.
Hey, I was closer than you were.
But so that's how they vote illegally, which is why it's like, hey, we need to get all these dead people off the voting rosters right away because they can be. It's why we don't like mail-in voting. It's because we don't know who's filling that out and mailing it in, right? So that's where we have the problem with that. You talk about the census and yeah, and kids as well. Melanie brought up earlier a point too. They steal it from children, young people who they create credit under 12-year-old names. And there's been plenty of situations where kids have turned 18, gone to get credit, and found out they've had credit for 15 years and it's destroyed. It's actually one of the best things that has ever been told to me, and I do this, is add your kids to your credit and start monitoring their credit. Put their name on a credit card or an account where nothing's being used. You're not doing it. And I've done this. I have both my kids on an account where you can credit monitor that. So if somebody starts to use their credit, you start getting notifications. That's a little bit of safety advice from Sackhead Sean, who knows absolutely nothing beyond that about that. But when you start getting into the census, like Melanie brought up in the chat room, They don't ask you if you are a citizen on the census. They just count the amount of people in the home and move
Democrats
on.
voted that down.
How does that affect your congressional districts? Well, your congressional districts are lined up by population, and they don't, and that's the numbers that they use comes from that census. So, you start looking at what illegal immigration does, um, by and large, and we talked about this, I think, last week when we were on the air with illegal immigration. It overwhelms our hospitals, it overwhelms our school, our public services. You have all these cities that are adding literally hundreds of thousands of people, but they're not getting any more funded for police, law enforcement, fire department, EMS. They're not getting that extra bit of money. It's just ridiculous. Illegal immigration is going to be what destroys this country. And it's not, as I've said before, it's not that every single person that comes over the border is a bad hombre, as Trump put it a couple years ago, but there are a shitload of bad hombres coming over the border. That's a different conversation.
They may not all be bad hombres, but they're all criminals.
Right. And what they're doing is draining a system that we're not prepared. Melanie brought up too is during COVID, how many hundreds of kids' data was compromised. And look, I'll tell you right now, I just got a notification from my health insurance that me and my kids' information was compromised because they had a breach of their system. Right, Blue Shield of California. They had so my kids' information's out there in the ether. Yeah, we're gonna do data monitoring and all that other stuff. And I just laugh because I just look at my credit. I'm like, good luck, guys.
Exactly. I'm like, I'm hoping that one of them go, oh my God, this guy's credit's so bad. We'll help him out. Let's get his credit up.
Yeah, no, I seriously. And it's funny because I tell everyone the reason I had a 750 2 years ago. Inflation. I've had to put so much stuff on my credit card that my balances have gone up, and that's what's brought my credit way down. And the other thing too, and I'm going to just rant here for a second, is
no ranting, only
I
raving.
I have really good, what's considered good health insurance. I pay a lot of money for it. I had to have this surgery on my hip a couple months ago. The amount of out-of-pocket expenses that I've had to pay for co-payments and stuff like that is it's cost me thousands of dollars when I was told Obamacare would keep that from ever happening.
Oh, what about Camille Harris saying that she's going to do away with medical debt? But I thought Obamacare did that.
It's unbelievable. Yeah, it's crazy. Excellent stat thrown by Melanie. And look, if you don't know who Melanie Collette is, she broadcasted with us a long time ago. Money Talk with Melanie. She's all over Newsmax. She's on the radio. She's a diva. She's always been a diva. She still is a diva. She's getting
Didn't
more.
She get elected to council?
She is everywhere. All right. But if you have a chance, follow her on social media. I know her X handle is at NJGOP Diva, and she certainly is. But the stat that she just threw up is 1% of illegals that are criminals is what, and that's the number they throw at you. Well, it's only like 1%. Well, you let 10 million people in. What's 1% of that? Do the math. And you look at what's going on in Aurora, Colorado. There was just with
Carry
the Venezuelan
divided
gangs.
by 2.
Yeah, your headphones are going to catch fire. Use a calculator, Joe. You look right now.
I'm getting my toes out.
Aurora, Chicago with these Venezuelan gangs. There's a Wisconsin one where there's a Venezuelan gang that was arrested for sexual assault from that what's it, TGA or I'm not good with my Spanish. And that's just them. And then you look up into the Northeast, Massachusetts specifically. You're having a lot of rapes and sexual assaults being done by these illegals, and they get released on bail and they take off into the wind, and then ICE has to wait for them to get released on bail and then hunt them down for it. And it's just it never ends. She was elected as county commissioner, the first Black commissioner in her county, 340-year history, and happens to be a Republican. So Melanie Collette has taken off. And if you follow her, she's on TikTok. She's all over the place. She's awesome, and she's always been great. she's just a wonderful human being, and she's introduced us to some of our greatest friends, which Ken McClinton, who hopefully is recovering well, and Lonnie, and it just really, it's funny. I like to say that SHR, we had the black representation for conservatives before it was cool. Just so everybody remembers that. Just saying. Just saying. Before it was cool, we knew it was coming. We knew how important the conservatives from all sides of the aisle, or walks of life, or whatever you want to call it, backgrounds, histories, whatever, blah 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 blah. We all knew it was more important for us to unite no matter what. And we did it first. And I really, really believe that. Like we met these conservatives that we were like, how did we get lucky enough to come across Ken first? That and it was Ken. That's the first one where it was like, this dude is awesome. He's conservative. Then we found out, like, into weeks of having him on the show, that he was a black dude. And then, of course, all the jokes started. And we were legitimately didn't. Back in the day when we were, I forget the platform we were on, Ken would just call in randomly and we would just talk politics. And he was on honestly, like 2 months before, he was like, yeah, well, when you're the only black conservative. And we were like, hey, wait a minute, what? And he was like, yeah, blah, 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 blah. And then he introduced us to Melanie. And then he introduced us to Lonnie, and it was just, it really made it so awesome to start having all of these friends. And that was when I really, the black conservative movement really started. And those folks were 100% the perpetuators of that, of like, hey, it's okay to be conservative and black, and it's okay to talk about it. And like Ken said to me before, he's like, there's a lot more black conservatives you think. It's just that it's not cool for them to say that in their circles, so they don't say it. And they made it popular, and I applaud all of them, because you look at how the conservative movement has changed, and how many non-white groups have finally come out and been like, yeah, you know what, we're conservative too, and you're starting to see really rise to prominency. And we have
the
these
Latinos, the gays, just everything. We're finding
we
out.
have
They're all
these-
like, "Oh, we were too scared to come out."
Yeah, and now we're actually hearing these wonderful voices that would never have come out if it wasn't for people like Melanie, that were the starters. They really were the starters. And I think that's something that is, it's something I'm honestly very proud of. I'm really honestly proud of that. I tell a lot of people that when I brag about SHR and stuff, like, that's one of the things I brag about is, you look at what this has done for our movement today, and how many wonderful voices are. And it's not that we didn't allow, they were afraid to speak, they didn't have a platform. And to see all of these voices start coming out of all different sides of this country, man, all different backgrounds, it is just the coolest thing. And I am honored to have been a part of that.
Now it's just a bunch of fat old guys.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's just back to the fatties. But so I still think that's one of the coolest things. And they're lifelong friends, but they're also, you look at somebody like Melanie, who's like making this huge change on this huge level, and it's awesome. And I'm so
I want
happy
to be
for it.
jealous of her for being on Newsmax, but I can't be jealous of her, because I'm just
Joe,
I'm happy for her.
I get bad news for you. I don't know if you've ever like heard Melanie talk or seen her. There's nothing to be jealous about. That would be like me being jealous of Tom Cruise, where it's like, no, I'm not even in the same room.
That's
How can I be jealous?
I'm freaking proud, and I'm glad to have been the show. I think it was after hers. I'm happy with that. I'm like, hey, look at that. I followed her.
Yeah, it's just I'm sure when Newsmax was going through like the headshots, and they're like, well, we have Jersey Joe, or we have this unbelievably intelligent, very pretty black chick. It's kind of a tough one. We're gonna go with the chick who actually knows what she's talking about, and is a financial, like, her finance part, politics aside, her financial and intuition is amazing, and intelligence.
I forgot to tell you the joke that was going around today at the house, because of me being accused, which, like I told you, I'm proud. I have to be up there in the conservative talk area to be accused of being a Russian agent. But I turned around, I was like, they got proof.
Yeah,
my wife's father is 100%, and it depends what part of history we talk about. he's either Russian or Polish Jew. He's
Right.
100%. So I'm like, they found out you're Russian, hon. It's all your fault. Okay, bad joke. But
Look, Ivan.
someone called me that yesterday.
I know. That's why I'm going to call you Ivan a lot now. Well,
Oh.
and it blows my mind, right? So this is, and I said this in somebody else's post today. This is how you know they have no substance to their argument.
Yep.
Is, I will absolutely insult somebody after I go through all the reasons why they're wrong. And if you look at how I engage with the other side, 96% of the time, I'll present my argument, and then it's them the first one to throw out the name calling or whatever.
You don't give
And
in
then
to their demands.
And then I'm like, all right, fuck you, dickhead. And they're like, oh, dickhead, man. That's like, no. I try to go through with you the facts of my argument and why I was making my argument. And you had to, as soon as you insult me, I'll block you at that point. I block people like crazy now. The other thing I do when I'm arguing with people online is I immediately go into their profile. Oh, you have 150 followers and you made your account in 2009. Done. See ya. Game over. Not even talking to you. Not even acknowledging your existence.
I've been having a lot even from this year with like 5 followers and no avatar, no headliner. I'm like, oh God.
Yeah.
Tell me you're a goddamn DNC bot without telling me you're a DNC bot.
Well, those are the Russian bots. So you remember when they actually started, when Twitter released all that information on the, I think it was the last, Melanie, I am not reading that out loud right now. Are you kidding me? During the last election, or maybe it was 16, where that was the profile. And that's why if you look at my profile on X, one of the jokes that I have is that I am a professional bot, something or other, as to who I am, right? It's because those numbers are easy. You start looking in it, like you said, you have 150 followers, you have a 14-year-old account, and if you go through, they only post every 2 years.
Yep.
You're a farm bot.
Yep.
That's why I always start calling I'll start calling them Ivan once I figure that out, or a comrade, or ask them what their commander thinks of their fine work and all this other stuff. And they get pissed. And then they'll block me eventually. And I'm like, no, I know, right? I know if I knew where your IP address was out of right now, it's going to be overseas. I don't even think it's the DNC bots. I don't think that they're like smart enough. I'm sure they have bots.
Well,
don't get me wrong.
I know the ones that I was dealing with the other day were DNC bots because right after the shooting, because I'm getting tired of, I guess we're going to change it up just a little bit if you don't mind, with the school shooting that happened. But it's, what do they immediately do? Blame the object, blame the object, blame the object. They are excusing the shooters by blaming the object. It's empowering shooters to go, well, why should I care? They're just going to blame the gun. And then they're sitting there, well, we got to ban guns. Don't you care about the children? Coming from the fucking party that had an abortion van outside their convention. Don't talk to me about saving kids.
You got to look at it. You got to look at it as to what their ultimate goal is. They don't care about kids. They don't care about people. It's to ban guns. Why do you want to ban guns? Because the population's easier to control. I don't care what anybody says. I will die on this bridge, on this hill. That is the reason they want to ban guns. And once you, and they know how this will work, right? Once you get a gun ban proved on a federal level, you can now piggyback off that to go to other things. So it'll be the AR first, which is why, you see them try. Oh, we have to get the assault weapon ban again. They screwed up last time.
Semi-automatic, anything with a detachable magazine.
Yeah, a bayonet lug. Blah, blah,
we
blah,
don't
blah,
want to ban guns.
And one of the things that they screwed up last time with the assault weapons ban that was in place before is that they did not extend it or add on to it fast enough, because they really didn't think that it was going to drop. They thought it would be an easy resell. They didn't realize that people were going to wise up. They underestimated social media is what they did. So, but let's go back to it. So that's their ultimate goal. So you have to look at everything through that lens, no matter what it is. It brings you to the Catholic school shooter who was trans that they just released finally the manifesto.
And
right?
What was the other days?
The same. So you look at Georgia, the same. It's the same ideology. You look at the social media and
Let me
Now,
preface. We're not saying all trans or all gays are going to go out and murder. That's not what we're saying here. But there's a pattern erupting out of these
well,
school shootings.
it's a pattern of mental illness that's being ignored in this country by and large. And
I don't even think it's mental illness.
oh no, it is.
I think it's being jammed down their throats that conservatives in the world hates gays and hates trans, and they want to kill you. They want to kill you. So I got to go and kill them first.
But that creates a mental illness, right? So it's like a Stockholm syndrome type thing where you keep telling somebody over, it's brainwashing, right? But that's a mental illness. You are no longer in charge of your own mental faculties. You are now working off the auspices of others, right? And you look at crooks. I guarantee you, crooks is going to be another one where there was some brainwashing. But what's the common thing that we see more and more and more? Most of these people were on a radar prior.
Yes.
Right. Same thing happened in Georgia. 13-year-old, the FBI were at his house because he was making threats about a school shooting. They knew that. This is where I'm going to tell you that parents are failing in this country because they're weak. Dad, and I think this father is the typical profile of a weak parent who's just trying to get their kid to be normal and not actually. I think dad is like, nope, there's something wrong. I got to man this kid up. I got to get him a gun. And he buys him a gun.
Yeah.
Right. Why? Is it delusion? Is it ignorance? Is it no? All he needs is to do some boy stuff and he'll be fine. Right. Once your kid is threatening to blow up a school or shoot a school, and once he's so deep in that ideology, you need professional help. There's a no-brainer. And I'm going to tell this story. My oldest son, he's autistic and he has a lot of other issues, bipolar, et cetera, et cetera. When he was at his worst and he was being violent, we made sure his mother's house, my house, was safe. Knives, all this other stuff. School was notified. All of these things that we were going through. Now, fortunately, we're past that, and he's in a much better place now, and I'm more grateful than I can tell you about. But at that time, we knew that the potential for him to harm himself or somebody else was elevated, right? So not only were my firearms locked up in my safe, but the door to the safe was locked, right? And I was, because I said, God forbid, we didn't know what was going on with him. We were in a panic. We locked up all the knives. I limited the type of silverware he could use in the house because he was trying to harm himself. As a parent, it sucks.
I didn't know any of that, man. Ooh.
It sucks to see your child go through that.
Yeah.
The trade-off to that is you have to be responsible not only for their well-being, the well-being of other people in that house, but also the well-being of people outside. It's your responsibility. And I'll tell you, man, it kills you to see your child suffering. The last thing you can do is give in to their delusions and their whatever you want to call it. But I also, even now that he's in a much better place, whatever, I still don't take chances with any of that stuff. Yeah, silverware is back to normal and stuff because we're way past that. But I don't leave anything unlocked. I certainly don't hand him anything. I don't, because until I am 100% convinced that there is not a chance. And there's the age factor. If he was a perfectly normal 14-year-old kid, I still wouldn't leave anything unlocked. And the simple fact of the matter is, kids have a tendency, and I grew up with guns unlocked in my house. I knew not to touch them. I knew it was what they could do because my father actually educated me about them at a young age.
My grandfather educated us and said, if you touch the guns when I'm not around, I'm going to whoop your ass. You want to touch them? Come get me.
Right.
We'll go shoot them.
And the same thing happened with me, my grandfather as well at his house. But the other thing too is my father was more concerned that my friends would try to convince me to, and it's a legitimate cause. And as you get older, you realize that sometimes it's just those kids, right? Well, let's just see your dad's gun. We'll just take it up for a second, blah, 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 blah. Right? No.
And that's where the accidents happen.
Right. So Or once they realize they have access to guns, if that kid is having a bad time and he's not telling anyone about it, the next time he's at your house, he could grab a weapon and before you realize it's gone. Because let's be honest, if you own weapons, you're not auditing them daily, right? If you think they're locked up and you kind of just get used to it, it's almost like, where your hat goes, like you just get used to it. So you don't audit it. You should. I check my weapons on a fairly regular basis, not because I'm worried about them going anywhere behind a safe and another locked door, etc., but just for my own sake of like, nope, everything's there, everything's the way it should be, blah 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 blah.
Well,
But
I think that's why the father got charged.
well, he bought the kid.
Yeah, but he's responsible. I'm not. The father's fucking responsible.
Yeah, he bought the kid a gun, right? Yeah, after the fact, he bought it from what I read, like the last 3 or 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
Todd, you created this. He created that monster, and even if he didn't necessarily create that monster, he enabled that monster. And society created that monster, and mental illness creates that monster, and that's the other thing too that I will say. With my son being just a boy, there was no other issues there. Everyone would come up to you and tell you, hey, your son's doing this. You got to watch him. Maybe we can get help, blah, 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 blah. And we already knew, but that's still the school did that, doctors, whatever. When you're dealing with young kids who are claiming to be part of the LGBTQ plus community, whatever, there's a stigma with coming saying, hey, your kid might be X, Y, and Z, but there's also another issue going on that's not being done because they're so afraid to be called out. Oh, you're just saying that because he's trans. No. Your son might be trans, and that's a different conversation, but I saw him kill 4 cats last week, and you might want to get somebody to look into that, right? That part is not happening. We are diminishing the necessity to follow up with mental illness in this country in general, but especially with our youth, because, well, what if you hurt their feelings? Or what if they're actually like part of this community or that community? And we are letting those children down.
I would rather hurt somebody's feelings than have them go and remove somebody from this planet.
Right. But you also have parents who are indignant about something being wrong with their child or their child doing bad things. How many times do you see a parent go on TV after their child gets arrested or killed or whatever and says, my son would never do that, or daughter? My kid was just turning his life around. We had no idea. That's the other thing that blows my mind. How can you be a parent of a child and not have any idea what's going on? And I'm not talking about the fact that, he smoked weed 16 under a bridge with a couple friends walking home from school one day. That's different.
I knew everything that was going on with my daughter, and she's 20 years old, and I still know what goes on in her life because she's my daughter. I want to know.
Right. And the other side of knowing that is, you want to be engaged. You want to be just a good parent and be like, I want to be a part of your life. But the trade-off to that is you're still responsible to that child for their well-being. That's like, I got into an argument with Twitter a couple of weeks ago about parenting, and someone was like, you think you should have access to everything that your child has? And I'm like, yep, 100%. I should be able to look at their phone whenever I want. I should go through his computer whenever the hell I want. All of that stuff. It doesn't matter because, and I even said this, I said, that kid's mine until they're 18. Oh, it's an ownership thing and that's like slavery. No, I'm responsible for them until they're 18. And I'm responsible to make sure that
even after.
Well, no, yes. But I mean, I am 100% responsible, as we're seeing in Georgia right now, until they're 18. They have zero responsibility themselves. When they're 18, all the responsibility lies on them. You as a parent become support at the age of 18 legally. How you feel is different. Legally, you cannot be held accountable for what they do past the age of 18. It doesn't matter if you want to or not, unless they're extenuating circumstances, whatever. Right. Britney Spears comes to mind. But
have you seen her videos that she
I don't even want to go down that road. Let's finish this road. We'll go down that road.
Well, I do want to show a tweet because it does have to do with how we started this whole conversation, if you don't mind.
Yep.
I put out a question.
Melanie said she was a teacher. People forget that. It just is follow up really quick. I want to get this comment out. As a teacher, you damn near need a court stenographer in your classroom to convince parents their kids are effing up, and that's 100% true. 100% true. I saw that work in law enforcement 100% of the time. Not 100% of the time, but a lot.
It's never little Johnny's fault. No problem. And I was going to say something in it. And it was a simple question. Okay, let me pull it up here so you can see it. And all I'm asking is which one of these three guns is an assault rifle? And which one should be banned?
Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. The answer is...
Oh, you're going to give the answer out. Damn.
Oh, I thought that...
No, I'm joking. Because none of them would answer it. None of them would answer it out here. Well, we need to ban all center fire. We need to ban all high power. But they would never answer this fucking simple question. And it was my fault. And I love that.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, every single one of those guns is a 5.56 round 223. They all shoot the same round. They all have the attachable magazines. They all can have high capacity magazines. They shoot at the same fire. Well, the top right one is a bolt action, so you need to be a little bit more proficient to get the speed out of it.
Right.
But all of them are the same goddamn rifle, but only the one on the left do they want to ban because it looks scary.
Well, and you start looking into that, and I believe the latest one I saw is that shotguns kill more people than assault rifles do. Hands and feet, pistols.
2023, I think it was, long rifles, and that's all long rifles. That includes
not
AR-15.
AR platform.
It's only 2.3% of the shooting.
It's
done with a long rifle, and it's like 1.2% of that 2.3% is AR-15s.
Right, and then you break it down even further. How many of those assailants legally had the right to possess that weapon, and it drops it down even more?
How many are justified shootings?
Right. That's the other thing, too. When you go into firearm statistics, nobody talks about this. When the DOJ releases firearm statistics, when they talk about homicides, homicide is just the taking of another person's life. Now, they break down after that as to justified or unjustified, lawful or unlawful, murder or not, self-defense, whatever is justifiable homicide, right? They never disclose those numbers. The other number that they throw into gun deaths in this country that people is suicides.
Yeah,
they count suicides as part of the overall gun death numbers. You start removing those, and now you have drownings that start coming up close to the numbers of homicides of deaths. The gun deaths matching close to drowning, auto accidents, cancer. You know how many people doctors accidentally kill on a regular basis? The number's astronomical, and I don't think that doctors should be banned.
No.
I understand, and I said this going into my last surgery. You know, they have you sign all the paperwork of you realize you could die when you get in the table, and I'm like, well, yeah.
You're putting chemicals into your body to nullify your brain.
You put me in a temporary coma to do this surgery. There's a chance I'm not coming out of it. That's just what it is. But there's a risk. So when they talk about gun deaths, when they talk about assault rifles, and I'll tell you right now, which is, they talk about the extended magazines, these extended magazines, blah, 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 blah. I'm not as good as I once was, but you give me 6 10-round magazines, and I can tell you right now, I can swap them son of a bitches out of my Glock like nobody's business, right? Yeah. Years of practice, years of repetition, muscle memory. It's not as good as it once was, but it's still there. But that...
Melanie says, well, couldn't kill themselves if we banned guns.
This is true. Nobody's ever killed themselves without a firearm. Yeah. The other thing, too, is...
And nobody's commit mass murder without a gun.
Right. The first mass murder happened in this country actually happened with the tomahawk, and it was done by a Native American. It was in 1804, and it was out of school. I think it was 1804. It was early on. It was out of school. And it was done with a homicide.
Oklahoma City bombing a mass murder?
Yeah, Oklahoma City bomber was a mass murder.
That was what? Fertilizer and diesel fuel?
9/11. Those planes were not taken over with guns, and those
before 9/11, there was a bombing of the World Trade Center, and that was fertilizer and.
Yep. And then you look at more recent history.
Sarnak brothers.
Yeah, the Sinayev.
Pressure cooker.
Yep. And but you go outside the country, right? And you start looking at Japan. They had the gassings of their transit system. You had the bombs in the 9/9 attacks in Britain. You had fire had been used at in Chechnya at one point where they locked everybody into a building and lit it on fire. You have vehicles that could be used, which we saw a couple years ago in New York. Um, I love the fact, and this is something that's SHR overall, and this is everybody in SHR has been like this, always will be like this, and I love it. Ball busters. Fucking all of them. Ball busters. Melanie's busting my balls right now in the chat, calling me a racist because we stole their land and now we're accusing them of killing people. Dear Lord. Oh, it's awesome. It's amazing. I love it. So you look at other ways that people can commit mass casualty incidents. You have knife attacks.
Yeah.
Where look at in England that just happened with the 4 kids that were murdered, or 3 kids and 5 more stabbed by a 20-year-old who has no formal training, walked into a daycare and committed a horrendous act there. You've had other mass stabbings in China. There was one a couple years ago where it was like 20-something people were killed. So, the gun becomes the great specter, as I said at the very top of this segment. It has nothing to do with these incidents. They don't give a rat's ass, because if they did, they would talk about Chicago nonstop.
Stop. But let me also
nonstop.
Let me give a stat real quick.
And
I
Baltimore.
2020.
Yeah.
And listen, I'm not 100% against abortions. There's a time and place for everything. There's medical needs and so forth. But for the way it is set up right now, 2020 is the last stat I could find. 960,000 abortions. 960,000 onboard children. Because I got told guns kill more than abortions. In 2021, which was the last stat I could find, 2,500 kids from the age of 0 to 18, including 18, 2,500 kids were killed. I don't think guns are out killing abortions.
Yeah, well, and it becomes the great specter because it's an easy straw man, right? And that's what it comes down to. It's an easy straw man, because if it wasn't for the Second Amendment getting in their damn way, they would have done it already. But what's the first thing? And people say, we have the argument, we've seen it in Australia, even when they collected up and destroyed all the guns, and now they're actually, I literally, as we're talking about this, Kerry Sloan, who's a gun trainer on X, is just talking about how the violent crimes have gone through the roof in Australia because the lack of firearms and the homes, like they've just banned them. The same thing with England, et cetera, et cetera. What happens in all of these countries where they want to control the population better? Well, the first thing they do is ban firearms, right? And then they say, well, you only have a few countries that have done stuff like that, right? The communists, like we've had this whole conversation. Look at what's going on in the United Kingdom. United Kingdom was disarmed, I want to say, in the 70s, by and large, where they've outlawed almost everything except for hunting, shotguns and a couple rifles, whatever. You look at what's happening in England right now, where you have not just the people that are showing up in England, not their immigration crisis, talking about the government and what the government of England is doing to their citizens with free speech.
Yeah.
Right. That alone, protesting. They're protesting, and they arrested an 11-year-old kid for posting stuff online that he wasn't happy about immigration.
Actually, Melanie, banning drugs did wonders in the United States, didn't it?
Yeah, well, we had a whole war on drugs in this country, and the drugs won.
Well, here's the other thing. Federally, guns are banned on school properties. It's federally against the law to bring a gun.
It's against the law to kill somebody.
Well, that was my second point I was going to.
It's against the law to shoot somebody illegally unless they're trying to kill you or somebody else. We have laws in place. They don't get followed. Now, you look at a prime example about gun laws not working. Aurora, Colorado. You've seen these Venezuelan gangs. They have long guns and rifles. They should not legally possess those.
No, because they can't, because I got told by a person on Twitter, criminals go to gun shops to get guns.
Right. That happens
They
all
do
the time.
background checks. They want the government to know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and if you ever talk to anybody that owns a gun shop or has a federal firearms license, etc., and yeah, Melanie, every weapon
Yep.
is banned on school property. But you go to there's one thing that people with FFLs really, really love is having it taken away from them by selling things illegally. This is one of the tricks that the Democrats and gun haters do is they tell you guns are so ridiculously easy to purchase. First of all, they're expensive as hell, right? Let's talk about that for a second. I'm going to go on a rant about gun laws. Let's talk about the fucking price of guns right now. Because the average person can't afford to buy it. You go in California, and first of all, they're adding all these ridiculous taxes to just guns and ammunition, where you're paying, I think it's 35% more to walk out the door with a weapon because it's a firearms tax.
I thought that was
Taxation without
already ruled, adding a tax to make it unaffordable is already ruled unconstitutional. But then again, California doesn't give a shit.
Right. It's going to get tossed out, but as of right now, it still stands.
Yeah.
Taxation without representation. Anywho, 4%. I keep telling everyone that was 3 or 4%. That was the whole reason we went to war with Britain over taxes. But I digress.
We're at what, 25 or something?
Yeah, good. But yeah, so you start looking at firearm laws that are in place and how expensive they are to say the average illegal immigrant and or criminal who has a criminal background check is going to have the $750 minimally to walk in and buy a Glock. Wait 10 days because they still put them on the 10-day waiting period or 7 or in most states, and then go commit their crimes is the biggest bullshit. Look, if they could do that, if people can do that, if criminals can do that, if you can walk into any gun store and purchase guns cheap, if they're getting them cheaper somehow, let me know.
Yeah, I want to know which store. Also, here in
They can get
Florida, let me
IDs.
tell you the law in Florida. If you do not have a concealed carry permit, you have, I think they brought it up to 5 days now, a waiting period for any gun. Now, if you have a concealed carry permit,
right,
you're exempt
It's
from it,
different.
but you go through an extensive background check. But this,
Yeah.
oh, you can go to Florida, you can just get a gun and walk out. No, you can't. It's not
No, you
that fucking simple. You can't go to a goddamn gun show and just
You should be
make
able to.
private. Right, but they don't, because guess what? I went to one of them. The whole fucking back wall was nothing but computers linked up to do background checks.
So Melanie threw this out in the chat room talking about schools, and it says predators are protected on school properties because of privacy. So if a teenage boy assaults his sister, the school tells no one and he can roam freely. Meanwhile, girls can't carry pepper spray. Ask how I know. Melanie, how do you know? I have a feeling it's going to kind of be like the case out of Virginia where the trans kid was raping females and nobody was talking about it, and they were protecting them. I'm guessing, and I know Melody's going to throw that up in the chat room here in the next couple of seconds. But yeah, to talk, this is the thing is they will make whatever argument they can to give up guns or to take guns away. They're not going to be given up. They'll have to be taken. And I don't. That's not going to go well. And that's not going to go well because most law enforcement and most military members will not participate.
Well, how are they going to do it in Florida? We have no gun registration. The government does not know who owns guns in Florida.
I got bad news for you, pal. One way or the other, they have gun registration. I tell everyone this. It's almost like your cell phone and privacy and all that other stuff. They know everything you're doing, whether you want them to or not.
I know New Jersey. If I want to go buy a gun, I got to go to the police station, fill paperwork out, and ask the police station for permission to buy a gun. Florida, I go in, background check, I walk out.
Right, but that background check attaches you to that gun because they have to have a registration on who that gun got sold
to. After a week or so, they must destroy all background checks.
Yes, they must. But who does that background check go through?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it goes through NCIC.
Me.
Yeah, it's going to be triple-eyed out, and that does not go away.
To me, I don't care.
No, I don't care either.
I had a boating accident, so.
The idea that there's not a national gun registry, there is. They just hide it. But it's funny. Wow.
That's
because they suspended. That's horrible. They suspended the female student for carrying the pepper spray, and also the parent told me that their son assaulted their stepdaughter, and there was no way to protect the female student. And you know, this is a problem. This is a societal problem, and it really goes. God, it's so upsetting. It goes back to we as a society are failing our kids, and we can talk about that when we're talking about the school shooting here, um, and the guns. But we fail. We fail our children. We fail to protect our children on a regular basis, and that's what happened in Georgia. We didn't. We And when I say we, I mean that parent did not protect those other kids by understanding what was wrong with their own child and admitting that there's a problem there. And he was on an FBI watch list. So that's going to be the next conversation to be had. How many times are we going to find out that these people were on radars prior to shootings and nobody did squat about it? And it's a problem. It is a problem. Look, I am not a fan of the FBI as it currently stands. The FBI used to be a great institution, but as it currently stands, I'm not a fan. But when I see people being federally prosecuted for protesting in front of an abortion clinic,
which is legal,
and yep, when I see that happening, but you see a situation like this where they're like, hey, we knew there was something with this kid. And we did nothing about it. What are you there for then? Or did you tell the parents? And look, if the FBI said, look, we don't have any actual evidence to go forward with at this moment, but here's what your kid's doing, and you need to get this kid some help, and you definitely need to make sure he doesn't ever touch guns for a long time. Because that's not saying that things can't clear up later down the line. I don't think I'm a big believer.
Hormonal imbalances that those kids are going through.
There's so much shit. But and if they did say that, and then this parent failed to, then yeah, I'll agree the FBI kind of did their job, because I don't also want them taking this guy's guns, because that creates a horrible standard, right? I don't believe in red flag laws, because just like domestic violence laws, they can be abused up the yin yang.
You're also convicting somebody without a court.
Right. Well, but it's the same thing as the domestic violence laws, right? The domestic violence, to get a restraining order against somebody, and you lose, if you get a restraining order slapped on you, you lose your firearms.
Buddy mine just happened to him.
Yep.
Accused, no court date, no nothing. They came and took all of his guns from him.
The threshold to get a restraining order is entirely tiny. It's easy to get a restraining order in most states. And I understand why it's easy to get it, but there needs to be some sort of process. Have I seen DV orders be vacated and have them been refused? Yeah, here and there, but no, by and large, look, domestic violence laws right now, I understand why and where they came from, but the trade-off to that is that it gets used as a final act to get rid of somebody, male or female. It goes both ways. I've seen it on both sides, where all they have to say is, he hit me, look, there's a red mark, and that's the end of conversation. She hit me, there's a red mark, end of conversation. You get arrested for domestic violence, you're going to get an automatic restraining order, your guns get seized. Yep. Right? So I'm not a big fan of just taking guns because
of an
taking
accusation.
Guns. Right. So
a lot of vengeful, and it's both men and women, a lot of vengeful that they just want to hurt the other one. And Melanie, I could top that, because Melanie says, I think if someone gets a restraining order, the victim should get an expedited gun permit. Or what 25 states have done? There's no need for a permit to carry concealed.
Yeah.
I know New Jersey will never do that, but
no, I agree with that. I have no problem with that. Look,
we don't have that here in Florida.
I think everybody who can lawfully do so should be armed. I think they should train. I 100% feel that that's a necessity.
Not going to stop it. I agree with you, Melanie.
But to go back to Georgia, and to go back to what the FBI was doing there, if the FBI did their job, I'm okay admitting that. I am okay admitting that. But we've seen plenty of times the FBI not do their job. And as we talked about earlier, and I put it out on social media, you have all these people saying, oh, the amount of trust that people have in the FBI is way wrong. And, that's because conservatives have done nothing but attack the FBI. And it's like, no, the FBI has done nothing but attack themselves.
Yeah.
They've had so much bullshit going back to 2016. You think of those two FBI agents there, that Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. That was really the beginning of the bullshit coming to light with how fucked up the FBI was. When you have him texting her, no, we'll keep him out of there. Don't worry. We're going to make sure this never happens. Trump will never get elected. From a government phone, that's election interference.
Then they got a $1 million payoff.
Then they get $1 million payoff for being wrongfully prosecuted. And I don't know if you've ever looked at Peter Strzok in the eye. Crazy when you see crazy.
I've had issues with FBI for a long time now. I got to tell you this story because I think you'll find it funny a little bit from what happened. I actually worked when I was in New Jersey. I was like 19, 20 years old. I worked for Armored Car Service. It was we were doing a late night run from basically North New Jersey, from a satellite office down to the main office in Central Jersey. I'd been driving all day, started to snow. End of the day, my partner's like, I'll drive. As we came out of the satellite office, we're on the turnpike, and all of a sudden I got a trucker next to us hanging out the window, flagging us. When I looked, he pointed toward the back. So I looked, the back door is open. We pull over. There's a bag missing.
No.
I lost $650,000. Now, why I bring in the FBI is because FBI shows up the next day to interrogate you. Oh, we just want to interview, talk to you, get your what happened. Then turned into a full investigation of, we know you did it. I mean, fucking with my head. But he turned around and told me, he goes, I don't give a flying fuck whether you're innocent or not. I want to close the case, get a promotion, and go back home to my wife. He goes, I don't give a shit about you, whether you're innocent or not. You can go to jail. I'll sleep nicely. And I that sticks in my head so much because they were dead serious about it. They didn't give a shit. And then a couple days later, he comes he comes knocking on my door. Well, would you go to a hypnotist, or would you? Now, I had said I'll take a lie detector test. I didn't do shit. Well, just to clear you, would you mind? Because we want to get you to help. And I just looked at him. I was like, you little cocksucker. You sat there and threatened me and told me I did it and all this, and now you're asking for my help? When I tried to help you, you fucked me in my ass? And I walked away.
You're like, hey, dude, I told you I was an idiot up front. That's what this is I'm dumb, but I'm not a criminal.
Well, my dumb part is I was trying to give him every little detail I could remember. I remembered the bag that was missing was heavy, and it took two of us to put it in there. Right. Oh, how do you remember that bag specifically?
Because it was heavy.
Yeah, it took two of us to put it in.
To get it in there. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so the biggest problem is the FBI hires based off of really, especially back in the day, and I'm sure they're still doing it now, is they hire off of college degrees. If you have a college degree, you're living your best life. They'll hire you in a second. That was the problem, is you have lawyers with guns, accountants with guns, you have folks that, and then it's funny because I've worked with these agencies. You have the U.S. Marshals, and you have these marshals who they work the street, they deal with people, they know how to talk to people, they know how to investigate crimes. They were awesome. The U.S. Marshals were amazing to work with. I know they're not always popular. The DEA was really good to work with because they dealt with people. They knew how to deal with people. They dealt with people every day. ATF folks, they really were good at dealing with people. They were cops, right? So they were able to work with people on the street. They were smart. And the other thing is they could smell bullshit, and they could also smell sunshine and roses. They knew when something was legit or not legit, and who to go after and who not to go after. The FBI and all my dealings were never like that. They were nerds with guns. Yeah. Nerds with guns. Almost all of them. And the worst thing you could ever do to an FBI agent is question their authority.
Yep.
Because as soon as you question, and then they immediately have to puff out the chest, pull out the badge, put on their blue windbreaker with the yellow writing, and start telling you how important they are. And I'll tell you, I there was a specific FBI agent, and I won't say his name, but it was the same. I literally said to him one day, I was walking through the station, he was walking the other way, and I was in uniform, and there was a bank robbery. I knew the FBI was in the building, whatever. And literally, he walks up with me, and this kid was probably a couple years younger than me at the time. Like nerd, shirt, tie, FBI windbreaker. Goes, I need a copy of this right now, and hands it to me. Who the fuck are you? Right? That was my first response. Like, I'm not even here for you. I'm in here for something totally different. And I looked at him. I was like, "Oh, copy is that way. Have a nice day." And he was like, "You're not gonna help." And he like started getting pissed. And I'm like, I looked at him. I was like, "Kid, this isn't your house. Like, no, bounce." So, but that's how they are in general. That's how a lot of them are in general. Is that every single one? No, there's plenty of cops that have become FBI agents. There
Then
are
there's
plenty of
those
people
old white hair ones that just, you know,
don't give a shit. but a lot
love
of
you,
you know,
BC.
yeah. No, but that was the thing is the old timers, a lot of them were cops before they became FBI agents. And then they went strictly to plucking people out of colleges. And these are kids who, were the nerds in college, and they get their little college degrees, and they're 5'2", soaking wet. They've never been punched in the face before. They've never had anyone, so they get, and it's just like Melanie said in the chat room, it's respect my authority, and they don't understand the idea of you give respect, you get respect, how you talk to people, whatever. So in your situation, you had somebody who was just like, no, I need this. I need the stat. The stat is more important than finding the truth. Why? Probably because he's an accountant with a gun and numbers matter to him, right? That's how you actually mark progress in your career, is your numbers versus what you've actually done doing the right thing and making sure that the right people are protected and the wrong people, bad guys, go to jail. So, it's sad, but it's a reality.
But like you were saying, kind of like and I know I hijacked that and went off total course. How you don't respect or agree with them, but yet I got in a conversation about a situation here in Florida. They're trying to legalize marijuana for recreational, and a lot of people are saying we're tired of the fucking smell. And one of the things I brought out, I'll go to the fishing pier, and there's a bunch of people smoking, and it's wafting all over the place. Number one, you're going to get a contact high. And if you have someone that's never gotten high before and doesn't realize it, then goes behind the wheel of a car and kills somebody. You cannot get contact high. That was the first one. And nobody crashes their car and kills people while they're high. I was like,
right.
I had to scrape a 43-year-old man off the ground because two kids were high off their ass. The guys on the side of the road changing the tire, they hit him at such high rate of speed, his shoes stayed, and he went flying about 20 yards. So, yes, it does happen. So I posted a CDC article that, there's THC in your exhale smoke. No, there isn't. Are you going to believe the CDC? I can't believe you're believing them. But you believe the FBI, you believe DOJ.
Well, and I'll tell you right now, California, when they legalized marijuana, the biggest thing that the cops in the state were saying is, hey, we don't have any really roadside tests that are permissible to court under this statute to test for people impaired with marijuana per se. Now, the reason I use the word per se is when it comes to alcohol, you have the per se law, but it's very alcohol specific with the per se law. And marijuana stays in your system for 4 weeks. So the blood test doesn't necessarily help you. Yes. Could they have redness in their eyes and other, other aspects of marijuana intoxication? Absolutely. But it's much harder to prove. Alcohol is very specific. I can give, I could do the FSTs, I could do the field sobriety tests. In California, you get to the EPAS and you can blow on the side of the road. They get your numbers and or draw blood.
Hey. Keep your personal life there.
or draw blood, right? So you have very specific things that you can articulate as to why that person was intoxicated in the moment. Marijuana, it's much harder to do that, right? Some people are naturally have bloodshot eyes, right? Some people, like you said, they being around marijuana and having the odor of marijuana does not necessarily mean that you're high, right? It could have been that you're. I mean, I'll tell you right now. Have you ever gotten? If you were in high school, you can smell a kid that smoked up before high school in seventh period.
Yeah.
Like the smell lingers in clothing and this other stuff. So it was much harder to prove, and they were pretty much told like, well, we'll see what happens.
Well, if you can't get
They
a
re-
contact high, why are these people doing shotguns?
Well, right, exactly. They released some guidelines on it, but it's really hard to
Yeah.
prosecute it, and it's really hard to prove, and it happens. And I'll tell you right now, in California, twice a week, and I am being super conservative with that number. I see people sitting in traffic smoking pot.
Oh, always. We got a little bit of I don't want to call it breaking news. I really get tired of that one. But I want to play a video that just popped up on Twitter.
All right, you get 10 minutes, so hurry
Yep.
it up.
This is only a minute something.
There were no fine people at the debate, at the standing outside of the convention center and screaming, Hamas will win, screaming, we are all Hamas, screaming, there was nothing wrong with October 7th. What's wrong with October 7th? Somebody said. No, there aren't fine people, and they don't make fine points. And so I was disgusted at the Democratic National Convention, absolutely disgusted.
We're speaking with Harvard Law Professor Emeritus Alan Avi Dershowitz. So are you ready to leave the Democratic Party?
Democratic Party. I am no longer a Democrat. I am an independent. I'll decide who to vote for.
Bill Clinton's lawyer. Correct me if I'm wrong. He was Bill Clinton's lawyer.
Yep.
Has left the Democrat Party. How many? I've seen. She was like the head of the Senate for California.
California, yep. She's
left.
There was another senator that swapped in California recently. There's a lot of people walking away, and I don't blame them. The Hamas-Israel thing has done irreparable damage with the Democratic Party and a lot of Jews, not nearly enough, and a lot of Jewish supporters and Israeli supporters, not nearly enough, in my opinion. But Dershowitz walked away. I have my issue with Dershowitz. I have a feeling he was. I really think he was on the Epstein flight logs. I can't prove that. Nobody can prove that. Every time they're like, "Oh, Trump's on the Epstein flight logs," like, well, show me the rest of them then.
Hang on, I could prove to you with a 95% accuracy that Trump wasn't on them.
Oh, because they haven't released it. That's the only way you know.
Bingo. They would have released that and burned everybody.
Would have released it 100%.
Oh, fuck everybody, but we can finally get Trump.
Yep, they would have taken down all of Hollywood and every Democrat in the world to be able to get to Trump, right? And they didn't for a reason, right? So I know that's how I know he's not in the flight log. They're like, well, he took a flight once from New York to Florida with Epstein. Okay, well, maybe, right? But that's not the flight log we're worried about. We're talking about the flight logs on the Lolita Express going to his private island. That's the one we're worried about. Which, by the way, this is like, it's truth is stranger than fiction. Do you know, you know the show SpongeBob, you had kids. Do you know that SpongeBob's home address is the exact same address as Epstein Island, the house on Epstein Island?
No, I did not know that.
Yes. Other than the Bikini Bottom part, but the street address is the same. I always thought that was the weirdest thing in the world. It's somebody showed it to me, and I have kids who watch SpongeBob, right? And I'm like, is this a troll?
Yeah.
Is this, or is it just weirdly, or is it like reversed where like maybe Epstein had that after SpongeBob came off because he owned the island. He didn't necessarily need a street address. It's an island. Yeah. But yeah, no, so that's neither here nor there. It's just don't want to ruin your day with it.
All right, there's gonna be getting ready to wrap up for the show, but for those that have seen, me and Sean did we called it X Roulette, and it probably not going to be a weekly thing, but it may be every now and then. And we have a little bit of, we don't have a date yet, but we have a guest for the next show. Go ahead, Sean.
Oh, okay. So for the next show, I didn't know you were going to let me talk about this.
Yes.
I was hoping.
I've let you talk 90% of my show.
So Chris Paranto is going to join us. Tonto, 13 hours in Benghazi.
For those that don't know, he does have a connection to SHR Media. My
He
first
does.
live show, I got to interview him. And then you guys had him Freedom Fest?
We had him at Freedom Fest. Yeah, the first year we were there, we had him at Freedom Fest, and he spent 3 days with us. And I always tell everyone this story about Chris. When we reached out, it was you got him. You were the one who really turned us onto it. And when we reached out to him, it was like, we're gonna see if we can get him for a second to even call in. I didn't think he was gonna join us. And it was just more of like we're gonna see what happens. Maybe he'll call in while we're at Freedom Fest or whatever. And we use Freedom Fest like, hey, if you want to come out, the book had just dropped. He said, hey, you want to come out and promote your book? If you want to come to Vegas, like we can't fly you. We don't have the money. We're too small of a network. He was like, yeah, we'll come out. And I was like, sweet, okay. And he shows up with a couple of boxes of books, his publicist, and he spent 3 days with us. And when I tell everybody, and I told this story on Twitter not so long ago, he talked to every single person, and everyone knew who he was. Benghazi was still very fresh, so everyone knew who he was. And Freedom Fest has a lot of conservatives. It's a libertarian event, but there's a lot of conservative libertarians. And there are a lot of people that follow the story. And when I tell you he was the most gracious and kind person to all of these people that had millions of questions, and he spent hours upon hours upon hours just talking to people. If they were older, he'd get them a cup of water mid-conversation. Do you want a chair? Like, he really is an absolute gentleman of a human being, despite the fact that he is an absolute badass. So I'm super excited that Chris will join us. That was on you. You booked that. You got that. Thank you. And we'll set up a date for that.
Yeah.
And thank
Oh,
you.
that was
Chris.
just a conversation me and you had about it, and just hey,
yeah.
We
I think it's
we also
awesome.
talked about it about trying to find a liberal that maybe could be halfway respectful, reasonable, and bring them on. I have no problem with that. I have no problem opposing view being brought. I am not going to be disrespected.
And obviously, we have our friends that we'll invite on when we do it.
Yeah.
And so everyone knows what X Roulette is. X Roulette is essentially, we were trying to talk about, he's like, oh, let's do a show. And, we came up with the idea of like, how if you hit the refresh button on Twitter or X and stuff just shows up, we're going to just pull those headlines as they come down, as people post them, and talk about them.
Yeah.
There was no actual format to it, and that's why we called it X Roulette. Whatever the ball lands on, we're going to talk about. Some of it was funny, some of it was serious. We had some good laughs, and we enjoyed it. So we're going to try to do that again. And yeah,
keep your eye out on our Twitters. We'll announce it on Twitter, Facebook, even smoke signals if I have to.
Between Joe and BZ, you guys just keep pulling me back in more and more and more. I'm telling you, man. Just when I thought I was out.
Okay, Scarface.
I'm making appearances. I'm starting to talk. I'm all over Twitter again, or X. It's just, oh man.
You don't want to come back, but then you start doing it, and you get a little bit more, then a little bit more. Yeah, but it is what it is. I want to thank you for being here. Tell everybody how they can find your
Two Against Tyranny, Sackhead Sean on X. That's where to find me. That's where I'm at. I got it. It's so funny when you have small numbers, which I still do on X. And if I wish I could find my original Sackhead Sean but it doesn't matter. Here I am. But I made a comment on Tulsi Gabbard's post the other day, and she actually responded to me directly. So that was my claim to fame for this week. Is Tulsi responded to me directly. I was like, shit, I didn't have that on my bingo card, but here we are.
Yeah.
And
so
you?
She didn't respond to me.
No,
I responded to you.
No, where people can find you, you bonehead.
Reaver of Common Sense on Facebook. No, Jersey Joe on Facebook. Reaver of Common Sense on X. And Reaver of Common Sense on YouTube. You can also catch me, SHR Media, on Rumble. And everything will be posted shortly after we get done here up on Spreaker, where pretty much we all started. We still make sure that's still there. And then it is updated to iHeart and Spotify, Apple, and a host
Everywhere.
of others. Yeah, there's a bunch of podcasts that gets uploaded to. Too many to remember, too many to list. But thank you, Sean.
And
That's
also,
good.
don't forget to check out BZ, Berserk
Yes.
Bobcat Saloon.
Melanie Cullett. We got everybody here.
Yep.
Well,
got
not everybody.
everyone.
We're
Thank
still
you.
missing Lonnie and damn it. You know who I'm talking about.
No, I have no idea what you're talking about right now. We had a lot of people come and go, so I don't know.
Well, Clint's missing, and
Yeah. Oh, okay. I didn't know you were pulling that hard to get Clint's
no,
name.
but the other one I can't remember.
Old age is a bitch. Close the show.
Yes, exactly. I'll see everybody Monday. Peace.
No.